Okay, so 14-day challenge, through and through explanation, long awaited, using Portrait Studio so that we can show how Portrait Studio was specifically made for this kind of, for these kind of specific portrait issues. Now, being able to paint a face and pulling off all of the form and all of the technique and all of the knowledge pretty much promises that you will be able to do that anywhere else in any kind of form. The face is a very specific form. It's a form that is diverse with all kinds of molar and micro edge work and all the form that you find form both zoomed in and zoomed out. It's not just about zooming out to find those geometries. The more you zoom in, the more geometries you find is what I'm trying to say. So right here on the, sorry about the hum in the background, that's my computer just running Portrait Studio. I run it on full. So if we go to the community here and we go to the 14-day challenge submission, we can see that portraits are a very big weak spot in the community. For every 10 moderate high issue faces, we find one solid face that seems to have very little issues in it. So it's the majority of people are having issues painting a face, and this is a very big problem. I would rather my students be top tier painting portraits instead of you know, being challenged in portraiture and everything else. I would rather my student be better at portraits than anything else. So better at portraits than gestures, than backgrounds, because portraiture promises that the student has, if the student has been following their homework, has done enough form studies that their vocabulary is exponentially expanding. The more faces that they study, the more diverse form structures that they find. They improve their anatomy and the biology and all of that and function. They improve their ability to paint a symmetrical face without needing to flip too much or depend too much on external measurements. They learn how to balance detail in a composition just by painting a portrait. And this all goes back to painting a landscape and painting the large structures and the long cast shadows across the landscape that come with flipping that canvas and making it a horizontal canvas and removing the face. Learning how to draw a face better means that you start to focus on the face as a building instead of the face as a symbol. So the issue is, what happens is you start to find that you are lacking in your form knowledge. And then instantly out of nowhere your brain says, hey, you are lacking in this department. I have something, I have an alternative for you to use. And this alternative is this symbol you saw a long time ago, along with this symbol that you see on the signs on the highway, and this symbol here. And these all pretty much represent an eye, don't they? So you can go ahead and lean on those for your drawing. What happens is, of course, you lean on those, and you end up drawing a drawing that is a denomination of a denomination of a denomination. So it becomes a very, very boiled down version of the original object that all of these symbols were pointing to. So symbols are pointers. They are not the thing itself. Write that back. That means that they are not the absolute picture. So when we're looking at this reference right here, a student sees only this outline. And they forget about the fact that there's an eyeball underneath, that this outline are the two edges of really, really strong lids. And these lids are very, very thick. They're not, you know, a millimeter thin. They're very, very thick. And these lashes are a form of shade. The eyebrow is a form of shade. The tear ducts, you can see the end of the eyeball right here. The eyeball ends right here. And you can really track down, as a diagram, the original shape of the eyeball. So that's what we have to start doing when we study portraits, is replace the symbols with diagrams. Replace the symbols with actual functional diagram, like an actual architectural diagram of the object. So portraits are the best way to study everything else. Write that back as well. If you study a face, you study everything, because it has everything in it. It has geometric and organic form studies. It has thick and thin fat structure, so fat versus muscle. It has bone structure underneath and some really, really intense geometry. Look at that absolute, like, it's a rectangle right there, right in front of you. And it has objects that are higher. It has multiple and diverse altitudes. So you've got cast shadows coming out of the eye socket and the nose, moving down into the face. You've got cylindrical lips that are a completely new type of fat structure or muscle structure, different from the fat of the cheek or the skin cells of the skin around it. It's unique in density and it's unique in fat and skin cell. And then you've got the fact that you have to paint hair, so you have to manage your large to small brushwork. All of this is required of you when you paint a portrait. And that's why I am so, at one point or another in my teaching career, I said, we have to start focusing more on faces. Faces are the absolute. Gesture is very easy. Figure drawing is very easy to mimic that form over. Once you've mastered portraits or halfway through, transferring the basic geometry of an arm and the cylindrical and geometric, like the combination of those two shapes in an arm, you can easily transfer that from a reference. But there's just so much going on in a face that I recommend this challenge to everyone. Find where you have weaknesses in your ability to paint a portrait. And this is all just, all that stuff I just listed, this is all just from front view. Imagine rotating the object and seeing it from a different angle. So this is a screenshot I took from Portrait Studio to get a very, very basic lighting, low contrast, simple light background environment value. And I'm going to show you in a second what I do with Portrait Studio. I have it loaded. But just from front view, we're going to talk about all the stuff that is typically required of a 14-day challenge, stuff that I most likely would never want to see in a 14-day challenge, and stuff that we have to see in a 14-day challenge for you to, you know, in the safety net of the lab environment, making sure that you have crossed all of that stuff off your list and have studied like you're supposed to. So what we're looking at here is a number of issues. We see sudden drops in altitude for no reason. We see values misrepresented between different functions. So you've given me a complete whole-like value that is similar to the values that you chose for the dark spots for the upper lip. Unless they have lipstick and really dark lipstick only on the upper lip, we wouldn't have this happen. So this is your day 4, so you're pretty early. If this was all day 10, that would really freak me out. But this is just day 4, so we're still good. You have no edge work indicating the eye line right here. I've made these eyes hooded on purpose, so we're missing some of the hood, the crease, sorry, underneath the eye for the lower eyelid, and that's because I think you went for Asian here, and I didn't want to take away from that, and then I'd get like all this comment about, oh, you made it not look Asian, it was Asian before. So I'm just trying to keep so much resentment. I may be graceful sometimes about how I treat commenters on my channel, but I have all this resentment for them. I just sit there staring at them sometimes, just fucking like going at them. Anyway, so yeah, before those people get all itchy on me, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna interpret this as Asian. So we're missing a lot of things with the eyes. The head structure as well is very off. You're using values that are saying that the cast shadow and the core shadow are all moving in this direction, but we go to the other side and there's no light here. So the light is top down, but you've used darker shadows on either side of the head instead of the lower part right here. So yeah, that's the permanent student voice in my head. I was always talking like this. I love my students, but because I've met so many with such ridiculous questions, I'm only human. So right here we see that the darks are only on the lower half of the sphere of the head. So imagine the head without all this stuff in it. It's just a big ball. It's just a big ball of clay. And the light is top down. All the shadow is going to recede for the lower half. But here you used all the values on the wrong area. So remember, guys, just because I'm critiquing this guy doesn't mean, hey, you critiqued his, you better critique mine too. I'm not going to, suddenly you guys went text him. I'm not going to, you know, critique everyone's work. This is not right. It would be chaos. It would be anarchy trying to critique everybody's work on the community. I can critique one of you very, very in much detail, and you guys interpret that into your work. So in me correcting the eyes and the way I'm going to correct them, in me correcting the face and correcting all of these structures, transfer that over into your work, okay? Student voice. Exactly. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is large brush work. This is number one for, at least for correcting or looking back into your work. Workflow is very different between someone who's critiquing. So critiquing workflow is large to small as well, but sometimes it jumps around. But if you're starting from scratch, please make sure your brush is always large and your brush is geometric. It's a very cubey brush. You're blocking in all the major areas. So I can see you blocked in here, but this is a beard shadow. Yeah, for sure. But this beard shadow doesn't just start on the edge of the lips for some weird makeup inspired reason. It's not, it's just a corner to ear and then back up into a really, really forced, awkward, flattened temple. What happens is the beard shadow goes all the way up. So everybody squint your eyes. I don't care if you're proud and you don't feel like squinting, squint your fucking eyes. And then just look at this reference right here. You see how you follow the cheekbone all the way down above the lip. That's pretty much where that beard shadow is. So right down here, we don't have the same kind of, I've really lowered the contrast, but right down here, we don't have the same kind of contrast as we do up here. And this is a very generalized face. It's a very universal face that is completely polished. So you'll be able to trust in this to unify all kinds of faces together. But right here, right along here, we just as soon as just grab this palette and compare it to the nose, very, very different value, but come back here. This palette, the swatch, sorry, is very close to this value right here. This swatch is very close to this. So what we want to do is carry the beard shadow, that essential core shadow of the sphere of the head, all the way above the lips. And I'm going to do that right now with darken, going on top of the chin as well, which is really important. So really, when I tell you guys to squint, sometimes I have a story to tell you. Sometimes when I'm in private tutoring, students don't know they're on camera, or they forget they're on camera. And I say, hey, you know, let's go squint together. And take a look at the reference. Nobody's squinting, and they don't notice that they're, you know, I can see them, so they're not squinting, and I can tell they're not squinting, and then they just go on and nod. No, squint your eyes. You will not be able to interpret what's in a reference and break it down into basic neighborhoods of value unless you squint. Squinting means you're disabling your high focus view into a low focus view. You're blurring everything together so you can see the neighborhoods more clearly. It's like zooming away. So you can really see that the eye socket is a very specific neighborhood of values, a very specifically diffused as well compared to the cheeks, because they're so close to the upper cheeks beside them. So when I tell you to squint, do it. It's going to help you. These are active ways of you know, being a part of your reference, being able to actively work with your reference, affecting the way you see it. If you're going to constantly look at your reference zoomed in, not zoomed out, high focus, you're always going to miss major stuff about the early stages of the painting. And if I were to measure the most important stage of a 14-day challenge homework, it would be the first half of the process. The second half is all detailing and polishing. Being able to know where to stop. This core shadow comes out of squinting your eyes, which comes out of a general understanding of what a sphere does in open space. Okay? So everybody got that? So everyone better fucking squint. Alright, so right over here, I'm going to go into darken, and I'm just going to get rid of that weird flattening bounce light line. There's nothing there that you've shown me as the source of the bounce light. And no, it's not the invisible shoulders, and it's not the environment nearby. The environment would get diffused into the cheeks on the side or maybe the temples. Now we have to fix this unusual pigment drop in the high half of the sphere in open space. So that means we're going into lighten and getting rid of this. What is this? What was it? What were you representing? So this student right here, drop everything and start doing some form studies. And not even form studies, because those might be too complicated for you. Try just some basic spheres. Shade some spheres in space. That's it. Just learn where a sphere's shadow stops and where it starts, and how to blend and work large to small, and how to radiate your values and climb your values as if a sand pile. Because without them, you're really going to constantly bring in these ghost core shadows from non-existent, long dead light sources that make absolutely no sense. And you're breaking like the physical law of this 3D world this object exists in by bringing in these ghost core shadows that belong to nothing. Every shadow has a parent, okay? Write that back to me. If you have some shadow hanging around, chilling in the back of the school and there's nobody to account for it, no light to account for it, you made a mistake. This shadow is coming from a moment in your visual library from the past somewhere that you wanted to just use, that your brain offered you, that you have to tell your brain to stop with. It's either responding to the main primary in this current event or not. So right here, do you see what I did with that? I got rid of it. And right at the arc of the eyebrow is where the temple starts. So now I'm going to say, everyone put your hand on your face and follow the eyebrow arc. Just find the highest point of your eyebrows above yours, just right near the temples. And just start tapping a little bit on your eyebrow and then just tap to the sides of your temples, back towards the front of your forehead, right at the temporal lobe. And you can see that there's a severe edge drop somewhere. As soon as you get to the temples and move out and fan out towards your ears, you find that there's a sudden drop. So it's not a sudden drop. You don't find an edge. You don't find a table edge on your forehead. It is all curved. But yes, you can stop squinting now. I'm sorry. You can stop squinting. But as you can see, the temple drop, which is of course gradual, but definitely there, definitely detectable. We just detected it. We are sculptors. We can test on our own faces. It coincides with the elevation of this eyebrow arc, male or female. Males have a more defined brow bone, a very low, heavy brow bone. The arc is missing, but very flat eyebrows. And again, this is why it's important for the 14-day challenge to study either gender. Sorry. So when we're looking at these, this is really where that shadow is, that temple shadow. And again, squint your eyes and you can see it's a very light value and extends right there. Again, this is a very universal portrait. You are going to find all of these shadows in every face you see, but you're not going to see this face in every face you see. It's a very general face. Now what we're going to do is address how you've used your highlights, which is always overused. So I'm bringing them down using darken midtone, darken with a midtone value. When we get rid of your highlights, we can see you really had nothing happening. When we talk about highlights, we talk about detail. Highlight, wherever light happens, is wherever the detail is going to be revealed. That's because light reveals all of the slight changes between each little tiny groove. So we get more detail because there's more light revealing the tiniest little grooves. And in the best kind of photograph or portrait, we're revealing the eyes the most because we look at people and meet them through their eyes. The eyes are the most beautiful feature. And so we detail those the most. So when I got rid of these highlights, again, we're going back to the workflow talk. The first early stages of the painting process need to address the differences between all these elevations. So there are dark spots as much as there are light spots. So there are elevations, high mountains as much as there are depressions. And these are as follows: the forehead, the cheekbones, and I'm just laying down some really basic values here. The upper lip, but do you see how my brush, my pressing of my brush, and I'm using the dry oil brush 2 from the dry oil set, okay? And right here, very light value for the chin, definitely as light or darker than the upper lip. And then I'm going to start blocking in some detail. Very strong light for the nose, as you can see. Lower eyelid. Right over here, you gave me this highlight as if it's like makeup symbol memory of what this highlight does. It's supposed to coincide with this. Wherever the temple shadow started, that's where that shadow isn't allowed to be. Wherever the light started, right here after the temple, wherever the shadow temple started, you don't have any highlights under the crease like that, under the eyebrow arc, above the crease. You do have light under the eyebrow, and it stops at that line we just discussed. So you can block that in if you'd like. Right? It doesn't just mean, we draw eyebrow and it comes up like, symbiotically, it comes with a little highlight all the time. No, eyebrows don't just come with the little highlight just hanging off of it. And then I'm going to lighten the values around the eyes. because they're starting to speak like makeup. I want them to speak like basic drops in the skin values, you know, the texture, the color, sorry, of the skin texture, which is very light. And you always have to ask yourself, what ethnicity is this? Then I have to be careful that I'm not value sharing. So the eye socket ends right about there. Again, very, very general area. So we don't continue the value that represents the eye socket all the way into the sides of the nose. Everybody put your hand on your nose, all right? And put your hands on either side of your nose. Lift your glasses, do whatever you have to do. Does your nose dip into a deep depression on either side of your nose? On either side of your bridge? Does it just like dip into a little depression right here, the little pocket for your car keys or something like that? Does that happen? Somewhere to put your pencil when you're not using it? Like the ear hole? Please don't put your pencils in your ear holes. Does it do that? No, so don't use a value to represent that. So don't do it. All right? It's a slide. It's a nice slide, like the slides we find in the playground. Quick little slide of a value, and that's all. We don't fall into an abyss right along here on the sides of the nose. No, so stop representing it with abyssal values, okay? This is the abyss right here, the big hole. Hole so deep the skeleton has it. And that's why the values just drop like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just start smudging along the organic areas. Organic just means an organic form study, which is all curved. Has organic patterns to it. Everything's curved and mushy is basically what that means. Anything living does not behave as a robot. And just look, we made all our shadows move in one direction, responding to a main light source nearby. No more weird ghost core shadows on either side of the head. And a definite, very defined cast shadow. Core shadow on the lower half of the face. What I'm going to do here is just lighten this neck shadow. It's a little bit too strong. And out of it, just get that face value back. Alright, and then I'm going to erase with the brush. So if any of this is skipped in your 14-day challenge, if you're bringing me like this crazy level of contrast everywhere, if you're doing any of the stuff we talked about around the eyebrows, if you're missing any of the form study signatures of what a sphere does in light, you need to stop because you're not ready for a 14-day challenge. A 14-day challenge is an excellent graduation project after you've done enough form studies. It's an excellent way to test your form study language. But a 14-day challenge is like a high-intensity study. And so what happens when you try it, when you're not ready for it, yes, you're going to make mistakes, and it's good to make them, but it's not going to be a 14-day challenge for you. It's going to be like a 50-day challenge because you're just not ready for that yet. You're not in that position yet to try it. So yes, I invite everyone to try a 14-day challenge. And yes, I invite even those who are having trouble figuring out faces. But for you to push yourself into that much workflow completion expectancy without having a background in form studies, it's just going to slow down your improvement. So if you have done enough form studies, go ahead. But if you haven't, please stop. Study a nose separately. Study a lip separately. Study some cubes. Study some pyramids. Some spheres floating in space. Some blobs floating in space. Perfect your blending. Perfect your understanding of when a core shadow happens and why. And how it coincides with elevations on the contour line and the silhouette of the object. And then combine all of that together over 14 days in a row if you can, ideally. And make sure you have critiques and then perfect the combination, the building blocks, put them together and perfect your ability to put them together. And then rearrange them to make a different face. And then rearrange them to make a different gender. So all of these are excellent ways to prep yourself for the 14-day challenge. But the 14-day challenge is not something that I assign students I just started working with that have never finished a painting before in their life. It's not something, this is just torment for the student because they don't have the vocabulary. It's asking them to translate a text in a language they only just learned how to study. All right, so now what I'm going to do is bring in this shine. There is like a bit of shine around the face, so I'm going to start with that. I'm nowhere near the eyes. I just laid down some basic stuff around the eyes. I'm just figuring out how light I'm going to go on the face. And then with my, again, this is just workflow for critiquer, for like a critiquer person. But if you're going to be starting this from workflow, you should have already blocked in the core shadow of the nose. Starting in from scratch, you should have already blocked in the nose. Okay, now we can start moving in. I'm not going to touch the eyes. I'm not going to go into liquefy because I don't want to make you think that liquefy is the best way to correct your issues. No. There is something missing here, a component of the eyes that is missing, that is making the eyes feel symbolic, that is making them behave as if they're like this. Something is missing that stops them from doing this, and stops them from behaving like a symbol. And we have to break it down into its diagram, and then draw that shape on top. What's missing? This space right here. That indicates the end of the eyeball. It also tells you where the eyelids will be, crease-wise. The crease of the upper eyelid is always just a little bit less than or lower than the circle right here. There's a crease here that is sometimes also a little bit above the end of the eyeball. As long, you can make the weirdest shape. Some of it will be due to makeup, so the eyeball will end right about here. You can make the weirdest shape you want. As long as you remember there are two ends that are just pink stuff. And they're represented by this edge right here. No, not the shadow of the eye, not the shadow of the eyelid. The thing that was keeping this eye looking very symbolic was this missing component. It was part of the anatomy. It's like missing a joint. This all could have been makeup. So you see, we can still keep the original symbol that inspired us. This is how we transfer stuff that was once a sketch or a cartoon into realism. We keep the original outlines, but we transfer them into edges and anatomy. So right over here, what I'm going to do to correct this without liquefy, I'm not going to go anywhere near it, is just indicate where the eyeball ended. And you'll see that the eye has become circular. We no longer need to move into liquefy and push that stuff back in. Makeup took care of the rest. And this is what I mean about how when you zoom in, you find more like detail, in like form detail. It's not just shrinking your brush and bringing in freckles and eyelashes. When you zoom in, there's more form study. It's the detail, the form study, and the form study, and the form study. So what we have to do is start thinking about how things climb radially. So I'm piling up the value here on the upper eyelid and using my edge brush, same brush that I described before, to create that crease just along the eye. And this is because there is a halt in the anatomy. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the eyelid folded and became a crease, and that's because the socket pushes against the eyeball and the skin gets caught in between when the eye is open. So we don't use a line. This is not a line. This is a matter of edge and trench and sharp, acute angles. So I need this edge right here that I just created radially. Radial climb for the upper eyelid, we've addressed the geometry. Sudden edge drop after a gradual gradient, we've addressed the geometry. Everything is a rendition of some kind of sub-shape pushing against another shape. Okay, so right here, I'm starting to just develop the brow bone. And again, if you guys are not, if none of this is familiar to you and you're 6 days into your 14-day challenge, you've been doing it wrong. Please take a moment, just stop, spend a week or two on some form studies, geometric, organic. Every student that I have worked with who I have assigned these studies to has improved. Because what we're teaching them is the building block. They leave knowing a skill. They leave with a skill. They don't leave memorizing one specific face and one face alone. They leave learning the language of faces and forms so that they don't just draw faces better. They can draw funny little creatures better because they know the geometry combination that combines to make the creature. So now I'm using some line here for the upper eyelash and the waterline, which are very important here. I'm going to designate a quick sketch line here for the lower eyelid. and a quick little line here to complete the drop of that crease. I'm not done. On the corners of the eyeball, just around here, there's a shadow of the brow bone on the eyeball. And that does a little thing like radially dropping on either side. Then we've got the inner waterline skin. It's very stretched and kind of works like an anchor to keep the eyelashes in place. So this thing right over here has a little bit of highlight to it. It's also a lighter value. It has less pigment. And that moves down into the eye bags we all have. We all have an eye bag. It's extra skin for the function. It's just like your knuckles. We all have, babies or old people, extra skin in our knuckles to help give space so that our hands can bend comfortably. So this is so that our eyes can blink comfortably. Then there's the shot. I'm just blocking in. If it's not polished, chill out. If you have this issue where you have to polish, no matter what, it's always got to be polished, brushstroke polish, you're going to sabotage what you're supposed to be benefiting out of blocking in like that. You're supposed to be benefiting from the edge work that comes with using a hard brush. So if you're going to polish the living crap out of every geometric brushstroke that you use out of a blocking brush, you should stop using it. Stop using it. Just go back to soft brush. That's all you deserve. If you're going to keep sabotaging yourself, stop using the edge brush. Don't spend money. Don't waste your money buying fancy brush sets that have edges to them, because you're not understanding that you need to respect your brush's edge if you're going to keep blending and blending and blending. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to blend only one side of that brushstroke I created. I'm going to keep this side. This side had a purpose. I used the hard brush for a purpose, because it's giving me an edge on one side. And though in an organic face we do blend and blend and blend more, it's not over blending. Right here along the eyebrows, I'm going to blend again, just on the lower part of the eyebrows to combine the hair with the rest of the face. I'm going to blend up here because this hair tends to move down and taper up into the forehead. And I'm going to blend over here because there isn't enough light on either side of the temple to reveal all that detail. Now I'm going to bring in the shadow, and this is what I go through between every single face that I have painted. And if you guys want, I don't like showing my recent art. I don't like showing my art at all on my channel. I don't want to be one of those channels. It's all about my art. But if you follow the fork flow, if you've ever seen any of the Patreon videos, this is the exact order that I follow. This is how I keep everything together. This is how I keep, you know, that in canvas anxiety at a complete low when we work large to small, and forget all about the contrast till the very end. Nothing is more important than finding where a brushstroke is needed hard and where it is needed soft. Okay, then I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I am in a position now where I can bring in some specularity power. That means anything that is wet or shiny. And that goes just around waterline, wherever the light is traveling. So let's take a look. The light is on a highway right now. It does this kind of stuff. Some of you like to have a little bit, you get a little excited when it's time to bring in contrast. And you do this to the waterline. Why? Why? This is not how it works. The water is on the surface. Water does not glow on its own. It's just really good at reflecting light. So we find the fattest part of the eyeball, which is right here, period. That's the farthest reaching part of the eyeball, which means it is the most exposed to this highway of light that travels, this upside down on switch thing that I talk about. There's a little bit here. There's a little bit on the brow bone right there. And it travels up just along into the forehead. Now we'll zoom out and take care of it. Whenever you increase the large brush, whenever you increase your brush large, zoom the hell out. You cannot understand what the brush is doing to the face unless you zoom it out if it's that big. Anybody, professional or not. And always have your navigator on. My eyes are jumping back. If you don't, if right now while I'm painting and you're watching me, you're not looking at the navigator, you need to fix that. You need to address that. That's also another way to interact with your reference, interact with the workspace around you, with your dashboard. Squinting your eyes can be a little bit you know, slowing in your process, but this is the quick way to squint your eyes. You can see the volumes, you can see the relationship of form just by a quick dash of your eye into the navigator. If you don't have your navigator turned on, turn it on, please. Right here, remember that line I placed? I'm blending only half that line, so it behaves like a crease. So I zoom back out. Now I really want to, you do have issues here that I have to address with Liquify though, because what you did was you pressed the, see how you did that? That's symbolic eye. You drew one of those symbolic eyes. Eyelids don't do that. Eyelids stay nice and rounded in a perfect C until they get tucked back in right here. So make sure that it is a perfect C shape. See that? So that indents, like the eyeball itself was like, had a dent in it, like a fender bender. Okay, we zoom back out. Now I'm going to start detailing. But, and this is a big but, detailing, please, I know that's not a big alarm went off in your head and all your brain cells are like, yeah, it's time to detail, and there's like confetti everywhere, and this brush gets shrunk, and your fingers on the shrink brush tool key, and you guys are going crazy, and you're shrinking the crap out of your brushes. Stop. That's not what detailing means. Detailing means edges first. Means that find where edges should be a little bit harder, and just leave them like that. Right over here. Yes, we will blend them all eventually, but we will not blend them as much as the cheek is blended. Nope. We will not blend them as much as the hair is blended. No. We blend them only until they are still edges, but no longer behave as some sort of lasso, you know, some sort of weird artificial digital lasso thing. Okay, so right here, a little bit of edge is needed here. I will bring in some eye wrinkles. A little bit of an edge is needed here under the eyebrow. I'm going to take this dark value and I'm going to darken the eyebrows a little bit using a large brush relative to the eyebrow. I'm going to carry that shape all the way up. Remember, eyebrows should start before the eye starts. It's aligned with the nose. I'm going to give her a stronger eyebrow arc, moving down towards that really, really blurry end to the eyebrow. And again, blend away the start to the root of the eyebrow down. There's not enough light on the lower half. It combines, a shadow of the eyebrow combines with the shadow of the neighborhood created by the eye socket. I'm going to choose the color outside here and just drag it down to create some hair texture. Choose the color on the bottom, drag it up. That's how you paint hair. You don't shrink your brush, you just chill out. What you're doing right now, what you're learning, what I'm teaching you is how to paint. So if you want to learn how to draw a face is better. It's a completely other thing. But there are still components that you can benefit for being just a sketch artist out of a 14-day challenge. Even if you don't want to be a painter, you'll still learn the appreciation. You'll still learn an appreciation for diagrams. So your lines that you will use one day in your drawings, in your animations, will be lines that represent, that come out, emerge from a diagram, a functional, believable diagram. And believe it or not, function is easier to animate than random, flat, Hanna-Barbera style. It's very easy to animate a blinking eye that has joints to it because it'll guide you around it. At least that's how I think about it, and at least it's easier in theory. It helps you kind of figure out how you want to rotate. I'm bringing in just a little shadow under the waterline. We don't grow our hair in the waterline. That'd be very creepy. We'd always have hair in our eyeballs. So it's just under the waterline. You see how I've darkened a little bit? Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to bring in the hard stamp Photoshop brush, and I'm going to use it to stamp in a perfect circle for the eyeball, for the pupil. Again, the face is just a little bit like, I don't want to use Liquify because I don't think I need it, but if I can pull it off this way, just to tuck it in a little bit more, to complete the spherical shape of the eye, that would make the eye. See that? It was just a little bit too long. So yeah, the symbol, we didn't want to, I wanted to show you how important it is, that inner corner part, but it was not a perfect outline you started with. And for those who say perfectionism really limits your creativity, perfectionism, if you're drawing an eye is supposed to blink. If you want to draw realistically, if you aspire to realistic artists and you say, wow, when you see their work, their eyes can blink. So function is perfectionism. If anything goes wrong in your real body, right now, if anything goes wrong with your nerves around your eyeball or your nerves around your eyelids, or anything happens that does not allow your eyes to blink, is considered imperfect. So being in perfect health is being in perfect function. Same exact thing with your work. Perfect function means perfect health. So perfectionism is not some sort of idealist Plato perfectionism we're talking about. It's not about ideals and perfect faces and not learning how to have fun. No, we're not talking about that. And those who think that I'm taking the fun away, you can just stay in the back of the class and be quiet. What perfectionism means, the term perfect that I'm using right now when I say things have to be perfect, is things have to be perfect in relation to the biology we're talking about. If anything goes wrong, the eye doesn't function, and it looks uncanny and creepy and weird, the way we have unusual. Have you ever seen an oval-shaped eyeball that is just perfectly functional? No, a joint has to be sideless and perfect and rounded off. A square, like a square sphere, squared sphere. So that's what I mean by perfect. That's the term perfect that we're aiming for with a 14-day challenge. The perfect is a reflection of the function, which is a reflection of the form. Okay, so it's not idealism, beauty, perfect here that I'm referring to. Okay? So now that I'm zoomed out, I get to increase the size of my brush. This is that late half of the painting I talked about, where you can start polishing. All right, and I'll talk about the nose in a second. But typically, I do have a whole video just on noses that I have made for you guys. And it's going to talk about all of the major components of pulling off a believable nose. I'm going to diffuse some of the shadow up here because that cheekbone, just like we see here, that cheekbone right here is reflecting back up and diffusing all of that. Getting some more detail, reflecting some light over here, some more light on the waterline, some light on the iris. The water, this is another component of the 14-day challenge that you should remember. The water of the eyeball wells and gets pulled by gravity to the lower half of the eyeball, which raises the value here. Even in brown eyes, it does this. Right, and I'm just trying to make sure it's nice and controlled. And then finally, we bring in the specularity of the eye, which is all the contrast you need. All right, don't go crazy. This is an anime, so don't bring in 17 of them. It's just one that you need. I'm going to just sharpen it really quickly. And it's going to bring the eye back to life, and I'm going to give you a reference point for all of the highlight expected anywhere else where there is water in this amount. So this kind of travels around the eyeball. You have a little bit of that same exact kind of white. And this is in color, the version of this in color is the yellow white that we talk about. I'm using a really low opacity, pure white, okay? And my pen pressure's on for size and transfer. So it's a very, very careful white value. I'm also going to bring in this black, really low opacity, and throw it on the lower half of the eye. I'm doing this because everyone has a dark spot around the eye. Some are more obvious than others, but we all have this really, really dark circle under the eye. It's just that drop in altitude. And the skin values are also just a little bit dark there. These eyes are very, very downturned. They're very almond shape. So just remember that. This is a very unique, very, very universally beautiful, but uniquely a little bit long. Okay. So what have we addressed so far in the 14-day challenge? Basically, edit. The eyes, the basic up, like the higher reaching, upward reaching, altitudes, learning the cast shadows, edges, shrinking your brush, and making sure you're prioritizing edges before shrinking your brush. Radial values and how they could suddenly stop into a crease. I'm going to move into the lips in a second. The 6 dark spots, the 5+ or 6+ light spots. So now what I'm going to do is just move into the lips and designate some really, really basic dark spots for the lips and the nose. The nose is all wrong because you continued the outline of the eye socket all the way down into the lower part of the nostril. So you overdrew the lower part, which we don't have winging nostrils down here. They're all the way up here. So what you did was the opposite of what you're supposed to do. Oh, up here, you're supposed to be giving me these edges and giving us this, you know, winging effect of the nostril. So I'm just going to get that cheek value. Let me just turn it, select a green for some reason. So that winging effect right here, in fact, I'm going to do it in the opposite way. I'm going to bring in this highlighter all the way in and create that edge for the nostril. So you overdrew where you weren't supposed to draw and you underdrew where you were supposed to draw. That's a sign you need to start working on separate studies just for noses. All right, doing a whole face and worrying about the head is going to help you neglect the essential geometry and all the benefits that come from perfecting it of the nose. This is why I say the nose, the face, everything about the face, sorry, is preparing you for all kinds of geometries you're going to face one day. Anything. Okay, so that edge on either side of the nose, look what it did, and I'm carrying it into the sides of the face just a little bit, and you'll see that the nose is very small and very long. Just from this quick edit, just finding the nostrils. Okay, so I'm going to increase the size of the nose just a little bit so it actually belongs to a girl of her age. She seems more mature. And I'm going to increase it. Again, I interpreted this as a girl. If this was supposed to be a guy, this is just my interpretation so that I could complete the paint over. Okay, so I increased the size of the nose. So for 14-day challenge, you have to think about age. You have to think that age has prevalence and how you decide on the sizes of features. This Cupid's bow, again, you don't understand that the Cupid's bow is this sudden drop in the skin in a very like mild trench. But you don't know how to do that. You don't know how to interpret that with values. So what did you do? Flat value. You said, your brain said, you know, there's something supposed to be there, but I don't know what it is. So I don't know. What do you think it is? And you're going to tell your brain, I don't know. I remember something there. So you just give it a flat value. Hopefully it'll satisfy your viewer, and that'll be that. No, it's not that easy. Okay. If you follow the contour lines, it's just a sudden drop in the value, but it still looks up at the light. So you use the opposite value you're supposed to use for a Cupid's bow. Okay? And I can just hear the oh in the background. Right, this was supposed to be like that. So this reference here, if you ever decide to take on the next level of a 14-day challenge, which is 14-day challenge 3/4 view, this Portrait Studio will help you as well. So it's a software generation. It's a reference generation software. I've been talking about it for a very long time now. When we generated it, I mean, we developed it just for this, so it could help you remove all of the labels, see nothing but the grayscale environment, this lab environment of the face, see it as a building and nothing else, and then evolve from that. Everything branches out of this essential building that unifies us all. Apart from the small microscopic, only trained to the trained eye detectable differences between skeletons, all our skulls look the same. All our skeletons look the same because we are human. We are a specific species. So it means you can trust that all shadows come in the form of an eye socket. All eye sockets, sorry, come in the form of a shadow. You can trust that there are unifying factors between ages of all genders and all age groups. Sorry, faces of all genders and age groups and stat types and races and that. There's something that unifies us all. So by adding the dark spots around the mouth. I noticed the mouth was a little bit small. So function-wise, her mouth would be a little bit too small. And this is where that beauty stuff comes in. This is where that beauty perfect talk comes in. You can copy whatever face you want. Of course, don't copy it reference-wise. Copy it just type-wise. If you like a certain kind of lip and it's from a different face, you can combine it with whatever you have from another reference. That's fine. So I'm treating this lip like a cylinder. There's a light for the top half of the cylinder and a shadow for the lower half of the cylinder. And then light and then shadow. It's simple. Geometries save the day. Basic shapes save the day. And then you're thinking, oh, maybe the top part of the lip is a little bit too dark. Well, a little bit too light. Well, it's not supposed to be that dark. We bring in a water line. I mean, that lip line, it's like the water line. It's a lip line that's like light. It's like a white outline around every lip. We all have that, and it reflects the water of the, reflects the light a little bit better than the lip does because there's all this moisture around the lip to keep it functional. Just like the eyes. Anything that moves around a lot, expect there to be a lot of water in that area to keep it functional. So anywhere else, think about it. All around the body where we move a lot. We're moving a lot. Our arms move a lot. So we have these lubricated joints in our armpits and everywhere else in the body that happens in. We also have lubrication in the bone structure as well. Ears are very wet as well, though they don't do much moving. I'm graduating this value to be 1 step darker. Again, I'm just using very general beauty rules here, something very universal. I'm not having any references nearby. And when it comes to references, so you guys, for the the success of this video, please make sure you at Istebrak and ask all the general questions about the 14-day challenge that you have. And one of the biggest ones that I get is, and I will tell you when you can start asking questions, don't start now, is how much reference should I be using? Typically, try to pull this off without reference for day 1 or day 2. If you have a face that you really like, moving into day 5 or later into in the second half of the 14-day challenge, day 10, you can start using some references. Okay? All right, what else is required? Bone structure. Females have jaws, as much as men do, just not as pronounced. So this thing right here, we need it for a female as well. And so we start off by finding the mouth and then providing the jaw. Remember that the head doesn't move, the jaw does. When we talk, when we eat. And what moves the head? The neck. So the head isn't moving. The top half of your head doesn't move. Does that freak you out? Alright, so I gave some space there. I didn't complete this eye just to show you all that you were missing. I do have a video just on eyes. I have a video on lips. So if you're having issues with any one group of features, please stop with your 14-day challenge. This is too advanced for you. You need to have a better idea of the building blocks that combine to make the face. And so you need to work on them separately, piece by piece. You see how you were missing the jaw? Doesn't matter what kind of face. It seemed like it was an adult girl's face and a young girl's head. For her to be of this age and for her nose to be that long, she needs a head for that. There are people, again, perfection is biology and all that, who don't have enough of a lower jaw. They can't eat, so they have to eat through tubes. Did you guys know of this? So they have surgeries to have jaws attached so that their mouths can open so they can chew. So this is what I mean by perfect here. When you're drawing a face, you're considering all this biology. So if anybody waltzes in your life and says there's no science in art, you can tell them all the sciences are there, from physics to biology, or light physics to biology. Right, so I'm giving it a very cylindrical shape to remind me that this is a cylinder that is the neck. Remember, I'm not taking questions right now. If you focused, you would have heard. I will tell you when I'm going to start taking questions for 14-day challenge so we can make one go-to video that has everything to do with the 14-day challenge. Okay, some are still asking what it is. 14-day challenge is studying a face for 14 days straight. Grayscale, no reference, exactly in this format, because what we want to do is take away from your dependency on accessories to hide your inability to draw something. Sometimes we add color and sparkling blue eyes and big lashes to hide the fact that we have no idea how the hell to draw an eye. And if you want to get better at drawing, the face is the best thing to perfect, because it'll promise that you're perfecting everything else that is found in the face, that is found elsewhere. So I'm going to drop the value of the nose one level down, and then I'm going to radiate it out. Again, if you don't know how to draw a nose, if you don't know what I just talked about, if you don't even know the shape that you're supposed to be using for a nose, please visit the video that I made a while back, early this year, on how to draw noses. So you can actually draw the nose. See this edge right here? Really important. It's required to make the nose feel like it can breathe. So much more believable. Remember, the rule is an under-rendered lip is a well-rendered lip. Please don't over-outline or over-define the lip. That's not how lips work. They are mushy, they are squishy, they are not there as the nose is. So be careful not to overdraw them and make them look like stickers or something uncanny, or at an unusual level of shading and sharpness compared to the eyes, which should be the highest level of shading and sharpness. All right, what else? You can see the beard shadow is there, but it's not that crazy prominent, right? And over here, this is just because of the type of light I use. It's not as large as the universal we want to talk about, so these can be diffused just a little bit. It's exactly the same. If she did have deep set cheekbones like she does, we bring in this exact shadow, something similar to what's happening in the lip, and we bring it into the sides just like that to show the cheekbone. But the fat starts right off, and we end up getting some of that fat back. So some of this is incomplete because the skin is very patchy. We can see that here with our navigator. You can keep it patchy. It looks painterly. What you can't do is represent it as a different kind of texture. Skin is a very specific texture. So it is a very mushy and porous and soft and reflective. So make sure that these patches, if you went full render somewhere else and you just have these random under-rendered 5-minute patches along the cheeks, it's going to stand out. It's going to look like you made that deliberately happen. And then you just throw off the anatomy that way. So I'm nearly done. Again, I can't, completely render everything for you guys. This is only some of the stuff. I'm not going to cover everything that is to do with the 14-day challenge today. I'll try my best to. Some stuff I will forget. Some stuff is just situational and unique between each instance, each student. But I hope this enlightened some of you on what I expect out of a 14-day challenge, what it is. A lot of you are taking it on, and I commend you for your courage. But the 14-day challenge, just like any other masterpiece or any full completion illustration, is useful for revealing where you need to work, what you have left to study. Because when you go into full render, you hit walls. You reach walls, but you just don't know. You reach your threshold, limits in your understanding. And it's through experience that we, explore our limits. So one of the more important edges is the edge of the face on the rest of the background, on the background right here. So you have to make sure that is nice and sharp. Okay, I'm taking questions. Go ahead and ask them. Questions you see asked a lot about the 14-day challenge. Please, just one question at a time. Keep it focused on this lesson. If it's a question to do with my, I don't know, my vacation dreams this year for the holidays, I'm not going to answer. If you're going to ask me what color I like the most, I'm not going to answer. Okay? Or who my favorite artists are, especially that one. Okay, so I'm just finishing up basically. I don't want her to have any specific expression. So expressions, keep it neutral. She looks a little bit stern. So keep it nice and neutral. See what we did with the nose. Some really quick changes for the nostrils and edges of the nostril. And we have a more functional nose, a very believable nose. We'll look at the before and after and you will see Yes, it's a big jump, but this is what I expect your day 14 to look like, all right? And this is what I want your 14 to look like. Yeah, it's a long shot, but aim for the sky. You'll reach just a little bit less than the sky. When you aim for mediocre, you'll reach a little bit less than mediocre. Okay, so there is one shadow missing. Forgot about that. Darken. And then erase. So it's the shadow, the deepest pocket of the neck under the chin. That was missing. That is another dark spot, but it's not so much a cavity, it's just a little pocket where the mouth and the nose are cavities. So very big difference between the before and after. And for the sake of the demonstration, I did push the render as much as I can in this short amount of time, but using a very generic face. Or not that generic. It does have the uniqueness of the artist underneath it. The artist that I'm critiquing. Okay, so let me just Alright, so you see that, how necessary that little pocket is? So before, you had shadows everywhere, you had lights everywhere, you weren't doing what you were supposed to be doing. You had less midtones, lots of midtones. You had just flat values to represent systems that you had no geometric vocabulary for. That's your diagnosis. You're sitting on the doctor's table and I'm telling you your diagnosis. You don't have geometry language. So you need to stop the hype. 14-day challenge is supposed to be something you graduate into, and it is also something you graduate with. It's not the end game. The end game is the illustrations you make 10 years from now, or those amazing illustrations you make. Maybe not that far off. What am I saying? So what you need to do is stop it, go back, do some geometric form studies, do some organic form studies, study how to raise some values up, where to stop, where to bring in an edge, look at basic blobs, translucent blobs, blobs made out of concrete. Try to be able to render all of that. Want to know what that is? All that stuff is? That's just still lifes. But again, I don't want to add a label. It's not just about still lifes. I mean, why call it a vase when you can just call it a blob so that it can affect everything you're ever going to draw that is blob based, from cheekbones to elbows to sword handles to spears to clothing, fabric studies, drapery. It's all blob based. So yeah, you need to work on your geometric language. You need to work on that. Okay? And I want you to reach this. Again, if this is too beautiful for you, this is just how I interpreted your lines, your style. If this was supposed to be a different kind of face, find a reference that you like and just imitate it. Make sure that you're following the tutorials for the first probably 4 days, ideally, of your 14-day challenge. After doing enough geometries, and then bring in a reference piece by piece. You can get a reference for the nose, mouth, all different. Doesn't have to be one specific face. And those are my thoughts on referencing. Let's see some questions. Oh my lord. Please someday do a side view, like 3/4 view or a complete side view. Well, that's because, okay, the question is, you made the nostrils darker. Can we even see that much of the nostrils when we are drawing the front of the face? Yes, we can, because I can't see them fully on my face. That's because your nose is downturned. Find a universal face to study. Just because your nose is downturned doesn't mean you're exempt from learning how to draw radial values for a nose. Not every character you draw is going to have a downturned nose. Which brushes are good? Are any of the default ones okay, or should I invest in some nicer ones down the line? If you're limiting yourself to Photoshop brushes are good. The soft brush is good for polishing with transfer turned on and pen pressure. Make sure that the diameter isn't completely small, so it doesn't reach pen pressure size, doesn't become like this super tiny little shape. So where is it? Shape dynamics, pen pressure. Where is it? Minimum diameter right here. So try to use something like this. For like early stage stuff if you don't have a blocking brush. But if you It's just, you can make one. There's so much goes into it. But to make one really is to just start with a basic square shape. You can have one side, which is a cool shape I recommend, you can have one side sharp and the other side tapered in a brush. And that will give you the edges you need one day and your taper. But this kind of shape compared to a block, which is what you do need, this is a really nice way to make you think like you're sculpting. Whereas here, what tool is equivalent and traditional that has feathered edges and a sharp side all at the same time? You're trying to do too much at once. You're skipping stages. So just let this shit go and go back to a basic square. You can make one. You can find them. I'm not going to plug mine. I'm not that kind of channel. I'm just going to tell you which ones of mine I use so I don't get too many questions about which brush I use for those who did buy them. Of course, you can recognize them right here. But yeah, that's all I can say. You need blocking brushes. You need blocking brushes more than you need blending brushes. All right? Especially for drawing a face 14 days in a row, you're going to have to boost your workflow. And blocking speeds up your workflow. How exactly do you start the 14-day challenge? Well, you paint your first day in this format, upload it to, go to istebrak.com, upload it to this little button right here, the Google Plus button right there. Join, upload to the 14-day challenge, and someone will critique you. If you're not getting critiques, then start giving some. Okay, this is a pro bono community. You help the people, they help you. All right? So this is where everyone uploads it. How would you paint a slight emotion? Eyebrow tilt. There's 4 areas in the eyebrow that were 3 main areas in the eyebrow that move. This part of the this arc, this main arc, the inside, the outside, and the whole section moving up and down. So you can start experimenting. As for expressions, that's a whole other day, and I've talked about that before. But expressions, do not worry about them for your 14-day challenge. Please, it is not about expressions for this. It's about perfecting all this friggin' form that is expected of you. Can we do a top-down view one day? If you feel like it's necessary, if you feel like you would like to perfect that. For me, those are too specific. If I ever needed that, I just have a reference for it. But front view, side view, 3/4 view, profile view, all of those are more important. Do not do it one day before trying a 3/4 view. How important is consistency in the 14-day challenge? I don't expect you to have the same face for the first 7 days, but in the last 5 days, I expect the same face, and I expect just low use of referencing that is too diverse. I expect to use the same reference over and over and over again for the last 5 days. Someone once did a 14-day challenge, and one day it was an African-American male. The other day it was a female Caucasian youth. No, that's not what the 14-day challenge is. Consistency is important. I forgive inconsistency for the first 7 days. That's fine. You're still figuring shit out. But for the last 5 days or something like that, or the last 7 days, please try to keep it the same face. Don't change your references all around. That's not how the 14-day challenge works. It's 14 days contemplating the same face or some very similar face structure, same gender. Start with the same gender and end with the same gender. And just perfect your form, your edges, everything. You will find, yeah, that sounds boring, but you will find a difference between day 1 and day 14. I promise you. You will find a difference. You may not find a big difference between day 1 and day 2, but day 2 and day 7, absolute difference. So consistency is important. What size of the canvas do you generally use? I use 3000 by 3000 at 300. I do have a big computer, a very nice computer, so it's going to allow me to mess around with very large brushes. You don't have to use something that big. It's a study, it's an environment, it's a lab environment, so 1500 by 1500 is more than fine. You're not supposed to be giving yourself a big window for detail anyway. You're all students. You have no business shrinking your brush early on. Any suggestions for image canvas sizes? Please use a non-tile. Please use a vertical canvas. It's a portrait. It has to be a vertical canvas. Okay, a long canvas. It's not boring if you're actually exercising your brain. Exactly. Let's see some questions. I always get really lost when I do form studies. How do I make sure I'm actually getting something out of them and not just idly noodling some shapes? You're getting something. It may feel like you're noodling out a bunch of random stuff, but you are learning, or you are increasing your threshold, or at least increasing your patience threshold for a canvas. How much shit you can deal with from a canvas before saying, that's it, I'm going to go have some pizza. For me, probably 6 hours is the limit. That's when I call it a day. I'm like, you know what? Screw this. Since I've been sick, I can last only 4 hours on a canvas, and then I just got to call it a day. I don't care what other stuff I have. My spirit wants to keep drawing. And you guys, if you watch my after hours, you probably see. But, you know, I lose my voice. I lose my energy. I need to go eat something after 4 hours. So that's because one day I just decided to draw something and last a little bit longer. It may not have been a successful drawing, but it boosted my patience in that regard. Istebrak, after a while of learning the shapes and doing the face so many times, has it ever become a problem that you use the same techniques to paint something and forget the original shape learned? The same techniques are something you want. A crown over your head is what it is. Perfect techniques you can go to, that you can trust, that are dependable, that will help you through a painting fast and with high efficiency. That's the graduation. That's the crown. That's the plaque you put on your wall. I have great technique. I work fast and at maximum level efficiency while preserving all the anatomy and form. Technique is something you can repeat through everything. A technique is a technique. If you think a face is a technique, you're wrong. A face needs to come in variety. So after a while of learning the shapes and doing the face so many times, does it ever become a problem that you use the same techniques to paint something and forget the original shape learned? I don't know what you mean by forget the original shape. You never forget the geometry. You never unsee it. It's permanent. You see it, and that's it. You begin to see the cube. You begin to understand why a shadow ends where it ends. Do you have a video about studies for beginners? No, that's not the way I teach. I don't really have a distinction between beginner and advanced. It's all under the same umbrella. There is no beginner course for, I mean, I guess there is, but when we're talking about the functional sciences, the observational sciences here, the visual form, the light form, the light physics, these are all things that you just go straight into with feet first. See, there's no way to explain nicely how light works with a form. It bounces off, light keeps going, and all objects bounce stuff off of them depending on their angle of exposure. So when we think, oh, we need a beginner version to explain this, there is no beginner version. And when the beginner thing is to do the form study and think about where the direction of the light is, and always think about where the direction of the light is. I think Istebrak is stuck on eyes. I think. Is it possible to do radial shading with a mouse? Please don't try to do the 14-day challenge with a mouse. Tablets are very cheap nowadays. You can get a refurbished one for like $60, a bamboo or something like that, though I do not recommend Wacom. The one I have, the Huion H610, I got it for like $80, I think. If you all have phones and you all have tablets and that's all you've been asking for Christmas, or your family got you one, or if you have a very expensive phone, you probably don't need it unless, you know, you, I don't know, commute and you need to call your parents. But if you have something left over in a month or two, or if you make the case with your parents, if you somehow have tuned in today, I don't know how you've tuned in with a computer or a phone, you have money to get a $60 tablet or a $40 refurbished tablet and just get started. No, you cannot radial shade with a mouse. It'll be very difficult, and you're constantly shrinking your brush and your opacity is low as hell. I mean, you can radially shade, but you're following a radial shade is a lot of blending and polishing. Ideally, it shouldn't be too much. That's why we radially shade, but you can get a tablet, and please try to get a tablet. I refuse to believe the kids of today, these millennials, don't have money to get a tablet. It gets cheaper, and phones just get more expensive, and you guys have all the phones. So, I don't know. Something's not adding up. The Ghost Core Shadow Exorcist. Does the standard round brush do the smudging job properly? No, please get smudging brushes or try to smudge with the smudge tool on scatter mode in brush and in Photoshop, okay? This little brush I made, it's in the brush set. I do have it available, and it does the perfect job of blending away where you need it to. All right, this is smudging. This is really good to add to your technique crown of jewel in your crown of techniques. 1 second, please. You can add that in. هل تشرحين بالعربي؟ No. كلامي بالعربي مو قوي، فما أقدر يعني مثل ما أسوي بالإنجليزي. I'm sorry. Can I stop squinting? Okay, let's see some more questions. I don't think I completely understand radial shading. Could you do a recap? Not today. I have videos on it in my video history on YouTube. My voice is gone. So go to my channel. Let me go to my channel. Okay. Don't know why all these recommended videos. And then go to videos. And then do a search. Radial. Ooh la la. Radial shading. Where's the other one? Radial shading. Or, wait, 1 second. Do I have enough videos on radial shading? I do talk about it. I do, I promise. So the nose has radial. I just maybe not title them. But geometry right here. This one talks about radial shading. And then go back to radial. Oh, form studies. It talks about a lot of radial shades right here. So this one here talks about radial shades. And then we have organic. I'm not sure if I named one. All right, organic form studies talk about radial shading. Edge work and benefits of smudge tool. We talk a lot about radial shading here, especially around the cheeks. This one is recommended. This one I do talk about radial values, but mostly how to work with reference. All of these somehow consider radial shading because there's no way to talk about it. This one talks about radial shading. It's in everything where I can consider form. I talk about radial shading. Okay. Can I ask about this month's challenge? This month's challenge is a absurdity challenge. It's like a Halloween challenge. And the point of the challenge is you'll be critiqued more on creativity, so how cool you combine different stuff with different stuff. If you just upload a picture of a Grim Reaper, you're not following the challenge, and I'm not going to look at it. The point is to be as creative as possible. So a Grim Reaper with 700 arms and a tentacle foot or something like that. I don't know, I really suck with this randomization stuff. And a horse that is made out of skulls, then that's really cool because that is the absurd. That's the absurdity factor. That's the challenge for this month. Draw something weird and new. It's not an actual circus, so please don't confuse it. Please read the whole thing. If you have issues reading this, you're going to have issues reading briefs sent to you by employers and commissioners. So this is all these challenges are supposed to help you deal with commissioners and employees and employers and learn how to endure a workplace environment like that. So you can go ahead and join this to kind of flex your creativity muscles, and I'll look at them all and talk about all of that in the 31st on Halloween. You are millennial too. I'm an early millennial. I don't count. I don't think that's okay. And then we're like a ship. Yep, we're all equals. Is the 14-day challenge mainly about the facial features versus the subtle changes at the brow ridge, cheekbones? Or no? No, it's about learning how to paint a face, period, and learning how to paint a really well-painted face. Learning all the factors that go into it, from expressions to characterization to biology and anatomy and form and light and all the techniques that involve pulling all that off and rendering it. Should we start with a sketch or use brush? You can start with a sketch. Yeah, get a handle over your symmetry and go in and start rendering. If you feel like a sketch will help you, a lot of professionals sketch before they do anything. I think those are all the questions. Abu is going to show you guys the updates for Portrait Studio, so let me get that set up for him. Okay. Alright, so Abu's going to take the mic now, so he'll talk to you guys about the upcoming changes in Portrait Studio. Again, another recap. Last time we did this, there was some noise in the background in the video recording, so this time, hopefully, this shit doesn't happen again. So Abu will take the mic now.
Okay. Alright, so this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have the ability to change how much the objects behind the menu is blurred. Just to customize it a little, you know, make it feel a little more personal. You know, for artists, you always want to have a really personal workspace that's yours. You'll be able to change the color of the menu too, but that we'll talk about later. So this is going to be the setup now. You used to have the lighting, the models, files, which is going to be a new thing we'll talk about in another video before we release, and then your settings. So right now we're in the model menu, and this is the model library. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of models. I think we have over 120 models right now. But this is the one that I put in for this version just to make it easy to understand.
It's just the demo, this piece right
Yeah, it's a demo for the stream. So, you know, this is how you'll be able to cycle through the models. Okay. So you have staging options too, so you can turn the stage off, stuff like that, but that's not important right now. You can customize your model, and it's going to be really simple now. You can change the color. You can actually grab this code, put it into Photoshop. You can grab a code from Photoshop, put it into here. These little buttons are going to be color libraries, which you can save for later. Let's make her like a nice
show the immersive light.
Yeah.
Come on.
And then you have specular light color, which depending on objects you can change it. And this is how smooth the object is, so the reflectivity is affected.
Choose a skin tone. Choose a skin tone.
Yeah,
Here, I'll choose them.
Yeah, go ahead.
You gotta bring down reflectivity though.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit more mattified.
Sure. So bring down the smoothness a bit. Bring down the
specular, the light source light, make it a bit more yellow if you can.
Yeah. So that's
highway.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then the specular color
a yellow, a white yellow.
A white yellow, okay.
Like a gold.
The higher the specular color, the more metallic it looks.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
keep it low, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll keep it like that, you know, not too shiny.
So you guys have all this power as well. Everything we just did, you guys also have access to this.
Yeah, so there's a lot of customization now. For certain models, you can add detail maps and stuff like that.
So this model looks a lot more realistic than the version we currently have out. So anyone who has this version, you will get this model update as well, definitely.
And right now you're seeing the bounce lighting from the sunlight or directional light, and it's buttery smooth. I believe it's 500 frames a second on our computers.
Great. So our computers are higher end. Please make sure that you are, you know, if you have a really low end computer, I would rather you save your money and get a better computer and then get Portrait Studio at a later time. But if you have excellent computers, and that basically means if you can run a game without lagging, if you can turn Photoshop on and run Chrome at the same time, you'll have enough to run Portrait Studio. But if you can't do any of that, you have a lower end laptop or something really weak, then you won't be able to run Portrait Studio and get all these features.
And you want a powerful computer anyway, so when you paint on big canvases.
But this current version that's coming out is easier to run than the old version, correct? There's no hum, there's no higher
we're going to have lots of quality customization. So the theory is, what we're going to do is you set up your project in low quality if you have a lower end computer, and then when you're going to take the screenshot and use it as reference, you're going to bring up the quality, take the screenshot, and bring the quality back down. So
yeah, so instead of like getting it to bake, instead of having it constantly running on high quality throughout the, you know, throughout keeping Portrait Studio open.
Yeah. And I have tested this on some of our old systems.
Really old computer. You
Yeah.
guys remember my old computer I used to stream with that used to hum in the background?
Yeah.
When I had those terrible 720p videos that weren't even really 720?
Yeah.
It runs on that smoothly.
It's
so
a
it'll
little,
run on this.
it's a little i5 computer with 4 gigabytes of RAM.
And it ran very, very well.
Yeah. So what we're introducing now, this is the main feature, is the object lights.
Woo!
So you'll be able to change between spot and point lights for your 3 movable lights. But right now we're going to focus on the object light because that's the newest feature.
So light emitting not just out of a light source, but an object. So you can make it expand or you can make it shrink, and you get this really believable like glow that you will get, that you don't really get out of the point lights that we have.
Yeah. So we're going to unlock the light, and the menu is supposed to be a little more easy to navigate here, hopefully.
Hopefully.
I think it's better
The more
labeled.
features we add, the more complicated it is. So give it time, and you'll be able to like catch up with what the what we're offering, and you'll be able to figure your way around the dashboard. Don't focus on those. Just focus on that.
Yeah. So okay, we unlock the light. You can move it around. You know, same way you always could. Let's turn down the specularity of it. Right.
Mhm.
It's kind of high.
That's good right there. That's perfect.
Okay.
You
So
notice that camera just jittering in the background? It's just everything's just floating around.
oh, the movement.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's
Feels like a real camera. It's just a cute little feature we added.
yeah. It's just like camera shake when you're holding a camera, sort of. And this is what you can
Keep
do
the
with
horizon
these.
line low.
This.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can change the shape of the light, and it's going to affect how the light is emitted, essentially.
So you soften shadows the wider the object goes, but you still behave like a point light. So I was struggling with this in this current version, but that's corrected for the version that's coming out soon.
Yeah. So and the light also moves according to your camera angle, so you'll never get lost anymore. It's going to be really easy to navigate.
You can see those weird little frames. That's what we have to do in order to keep the program from crashing. We lower quality as the rotation happens, as the camera happens, as you can see. But as soon as you stop moving, the image bakes and it looks better.
Yeah, that
for your screenshot.
That little matrix blurring thing. That's
that's normal. That's fine.
That's the camera rendering, basically.
Exactly.
So we can adjust the strength of the light. You know, we can bring it up. We can change the width.
Put it in front of her face so they can see the softened shadows, and raise it up a little bit above the head.
Sure. Let me bring this down.
That's way too much. Up, higher, higher, off screen. Yep. And lower specularity just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
There you go. A little bit more in front. A little bit more in front of her. See how soft her neck shadow is? A little bit more in front of her. So above, and then towards me. Yep. There you go. This is exactly how they soften shadows and a little bit higher. Go up.
Higher more?
Yeah, just to cast a shadow. That bounce light around the nose. Is that the ambience?
It's so diffused because the light is so big.
The nostrils, I mean.
Yeah, because the bounce light. But we'll drop in like some of the other models as well.
Are cast shadows turned off?
No, these aren't cast shadows. These are like real life.
Okay.
Like diffused shadows.
Okay.
So you can see the
cast shadows there, but it's diffused. All right.
Yeah. So you get a penumbra and an umbra or whatever. So let's switch over to something with more geometry in it. Something like that. So this is the one that I keep showing off on Facebook and stuff.
So if you guys follow us on Facebook, we send screenshots of all of this, and so you guys can have constant updates.
Yeah, so we can do like a
So basically, we're using this model to show that the detail on the model, that surface detail, is still intact. So again, if you ever had issues figuring out how these specific scales or micro detail reflects light, and still, again, like I said before in the critique today, how we have one micro shape inside another shape, but they're all form and they're all three-dimensional. This helps give you an idea that everything is three-dimensional. Everything responds to light universally.
Yes.
Every little scale is a form study in and of itself. And I think that is the most, it's an education tool as much as a software, I mean, like, you know, software to assist you with your painting and finding references and generating references. Right, so whenever you're done, you've found the reference you like, and we will have lots and lots of models. You take it over to your painting and you start painting. Choose the camera angle, choose the light intensity, and you can change expressions, and you can move around the models on its neck. You can make it look to the side. And then you take it over into your painting and you have the reference. No need to look around for a reference on Google or find good fashion photography with decent cast shadows. You can choose the face you like on some photograph and then generate the shadows you want to combine with that face through Portrait Studio.
Yeah, so we really encourage you guys, if you have Portrait Studio, to just play around with it a lot to understand how light works with form. That's the whole purpose of this, really. Just understanding how lighting works. And we're going to also introduce different shapes.
Yep, so just like we showed you before, Shape Studio, if you guys remember that. We're going to introduce different shapes for the light.
So you can have different kinds of emissive lighting. So if you want a ball, or you want a plane, or you want a figurine, or a head, or whatever. And
as for the sale for Portrait Studio after the update that's coming out this month or next, which will be full price, the sale will be in January. So if some of you are interested in buying it at a later time and getting the update, we do have to keep it at full price for a while because we can't update and release it at a sale price, because there are those who paid full price and supported the program early on. So we will delay the sale price, you know, and to honor those who pay the full price. We don't want to just pull an Apple.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So that's what we got here. We're gonna be done with it very soon, and hopefully
that silhouette.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Hopefully
so don't worry about that weird jittery artifact while you're moving light source. That's just it baking. No game you've ever played has this much frame rate or has this much quality in the lighting. All games have pre-baked stuff. This is real-time shadow casting, and so you're gonna have to give your computer time to bake it. But it's a good sacrifice for an excellent full-resolution reference that you're gonna work with. Okay, guys. So to join class, and if you liked what you saw today, just go to Istebrak.com and click on the Google+ icon to join the community. And this is where you can get critiques for anything that you submit. If you want to upload your 14-day challenges, you have to make sure you follow the rules. You can upload once a day for a 14-day challenge. For the store, to get your copy of Portrait Studio, which is the cheapest it's going to be for a while, you can go to the store right here on Istebrak.com. There's also a selfie page if you guys don't like using your card and just want to use your PayPal balance. You can also use your PayPal balance on Istebrak.com. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Did you guys notice how I put the head on top of the body and made it look like a bubble? I did that on purpose.
It looks like a ghost head.
So yeah, everyone, I will see you guys on Thursday. Bye. Thanks for tuning in.